In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to accept arguments into your console application. Now, an argument is a value that's passed in whenever somebody types them on the command line. For example, if you'll notice in our application here that I've created, I created an application called More About Console Apps. And if you look in the bin directory, there is a more about consoleapps.exe. So we want to execute that program that I created. And what we're also going to do is pass in three values, Mo, Larry, and Curly. I can pass in as many arguments as I want to, and each one of those arguments in my application will be printed back to the screen, like so. Argument 0 is Mo. Argument 1 is Larry, and argument 2 is Curly. Now the first thing to note here, a sub means that we're not going to return any value from this section of code, from this procedure. But a function means that we're going to return something from the procedure. By return, I mean there will be a value that's passed back to whatever code called the function main. In this case, it'll be an application. And in this case, we're going to return the value of 0 if we complete it successfully. So let's not focus on that for right now. We'll point out the difference between functions and subs and other types of methods in a video that's upcoming in this series. What I want you to focus on is the fact that we get this by-val command args with an open and close parenthesis as string. And what this means is you're going to accept any number of arguments to come in, to be typed in at the end of the executable's name. So in our case, it was More About Console Apps, and then we typed in Mo, Larry, and Curly. Mo, Larry, and Curly are combined into that command args array. Again, we're not going to talk about array in too much depth in this video, but arrays are basically collections of data. And those collections of data all share the same name, but you access them through a number. So for example, the reason why we saw Mo as 0 and I believe Larry as 1 and Curly as 2 was because those were wrapped into a command line argument. Then you can see in this line of code, these lines of code, that we started at 0 to basically whatever the highest number of command args are available. That's what the ubound statement is. Tell me how many values are inside of this command args array. So we're going to then use a for next loop, for next, to loop through and execute this line of code that many times. So the first time we started the value of 0, arg for argnum equals 0 to the highest number, which would be 2. So we'll start at 0, console.writeLine, which you already know what that does, argument, and then we get the argument number, which should be 0, and we convert it to a string. Then we add some values to it, like concatenating strings together. And then we reference the value, the first value, since this is 0, the first value of the array, which would be Mo, and we add that to our console.writeLine statement. So that's why we're able to pass through it once with sub-0 and Mo, then we pass through it a second time with Larry at sub-1, and then a third time with Curly at sub-2. And then we finish the application successfully. Now it's kind of challenging to test or to set a breakpoint and then walk through these lines of code because it's difficult, and I don't want to show you the technique just yet for adding command line arguments to your project. But you can simply just open up the command window, just like we talked about earlier in this video series, and then test this application out by typing more about console apps and type in champ and kitty, for example, and then have it print out that way. But the most important concept here is that you can pass in values and that those values are collected together and referred to as one variable name that is an array of values, and then be able to reference each of those values with a numerical reference ID starting at the number 0 and moving upward until you've hit the last value. So that's all I wanted to tell you about in this video. A little bit long-winded, I know, but it's an important concept. We talked about some things that probably outside of what you completely understand at this point, but the following videos, the next 3 or 4, will make a lot of these things more clear. So I hope you enjoyed this video, learned a little bit more about console applications. Thank you.